Hey, everybody, welcome on back. It's Rubbin is Racing, brought to you by NASCAR. NASCAR did a job this week. They needed to get the Chicago race off, and it seemed like everybody, including God, tried to stop them, but they pulled it off. So congratulations to them right off the bat. We've been looking forward to this race for most of the season. There's been a lot of skeptics. I've been skeptical at times. I know a lot of other people are pretty vocal about it, but they got this race done, and that's pretty important for them going forward. I don't know what's next for them as far as, planning these, putting some dirt on Bristol, building a a racing track inside of a Coliseum, or racing in the streets of Chicago for the first time. But whatever the hell they do, it's been pretty goddamn electric. And the LA race was a feat of engineering, like Army Corps of Engineering type stuff. And the Chicago race that they just pulled off was an absolute feat of logistics. Everything that could be thrown at them was thrown at them. So congratulations to NASCAR, and make sure you tune in this Sunday. We're getting back to a little bit of normalcy going into the summer. So this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, it's a night race. Tune into USA. Remember, we jumped from Fox to NBC, and with Fox to NBC, we go over to USA for the secondary stuff. So USA, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday for the Quaker State 400 from Atlanta Motor Speedway. We're back to the ovals. No more of this street bullshit. And with that, let's get to the podcast. It's me and Spider today. Spider and I. It's me and Spider today. We're at home because the Barstool offices are closed for construction. Quiggs is currently on a flight. He's coming back from the White Party. I don't know if you guys had seen that, but everyone thought it was James Corden. It was actually Quiggs. Because they're dead ringers for each other. So from what I understand, he had a good time talking to a lot of his liberal Hollywood friends. So it's myself, it's Spider, it's our guy Chase who does our social, and it's obviously Liam on the ones and twos. We're not going three wide today with any driver because the driver that we wanted to talk to is currently on a 37-hour flight home, I think. And so we're just winging it in light of Chicago. We'll start with a recap, and I'm going right to dinner. Right to dinner on Friday night. Spider and I, Liam, the whole crew, we went with NASCAR to Joe's Stone Claws in Chicago. And Spider pulls one of the most pimp moves I've ever seen. Like, there's royalty with every sport. I don't know, Robert Kraft, is he royalty in the NFL?
I would say so.
Yeah, Goodell, I mean, is royalty, even though Barstool hates him. There are certain people that are just royalty in their respective sports. And the royalty in NASCAR is the France family. And we were sitting at a pretty fancy steakhouse in Chicago on Friday night, and not boozed up or anything. We got boozed up, but before the booze had really started to flow, Spider, who's got the eye, I don't know how he does it. He just notices everybody. He notices Jim France, direct descendant of the guy who just started NASCAR, was sitting a couple tables over from us. So he's like, I'm going to go over and talk to him. And everybody at our table, all the NASCAR representatives, Morgan, Patrick, the whole lot, they were like, please don't. And you did. And it wound up being good. What did you talk to him? Who's Jim France again? And what did you talk to the guy about?
There's the photo of me at dinner shaking their hand.
Right.
Him and Mike Helton, two of the NASCAR goats. But yeah, Jim France, basically CEO, chairman of NASCAR, as well as the organization that owns all the tracks. But I went up to the table and I was just like, hey guys, thanks so much for what you're doing for NASCAR. I love this. I love that you guys are, trying new things and being aggressive with the scheduling and trying your hand at new events like the Chicago Street Race. I just moved to Chicago. I could not be more excited for this weekend. Thank you for your efforts and everything you do for our great sport. And then I shook their hand and kept it pushing. But no, great to see them there. And I think they were pretty receptive. And, for a second, I thought they were going to be like, sir, we're eating, like, fuck off.
Right.
But they couldn't have been nicer. And they seem genuinely appreciative. And I think I speak for a good portion of NASCAR fans and Chicago residents when I say those things. Like, this was truly a groundbreaking event, and I'm glad that they decided to do it, and they pulled it off, as you said, Large. Despite everything thrown against them, they answered the call. So I'm glad I could get in front of that and offer them congratulations and well wishes.
There are a lot of NASCAR sponsored content out there that is really, really blowing NASCAR, saying that it went off flawlessly. And that's just not true. That's just not true, man. Like I had said it from the intro, like if you saw the secondary headlines about, guys sneaking onto the track at night, like some guy snuck on with a Corvette and tried to film a rap video. I mean, there was, reports of people stealing bulldozers during the like people joyriding and bulldozers and backhoes. There was in probably an inordinate amount of theft, but like we had seen some antics go on in the VIP stuff, which alcohol just got wiped out by people who were kind of coming in and out during the lightning delays. So they had to put up with everything, including a clip that everybody saw where one of the wheels, one of the slicks from a car was actually floating in a puddle, right? So there was a point where Spider and I and the whole crew were just sitting down in a pretty cool place, Chicago Athletic Association.
Yeah, I believe so.
That was pretty cool. And we were about to like switch around flights to see if everyone could stay Monday. Spider wasn't involved with that, obviously, because he lives in Chicago now. But everyone thought that for sure it was going to be Monday. But somehow they blew the majority of the water off the track, and they got this thing in. And even when the race was going, they still had to battle against the sun. You know what I'm saying? So there was so many things that, and being such a big town like Chicago, I don't think the town was buzzing unless you were immediately near the track, because it's Chicago. You know what I mean? Like if you were on the outskirts, maybe in Lincoln Park or something, maybe they wouldn't have even been too aware of it. But when you did get down to the track, it was pretty goddamn impressive. Pretty goddamn impressive. Saturday's race caused a couple of people to complain because Cole Custer won the shortened Xfinity race. They had stopped the Xfinity race because of lightning, and even though it wasn't at the minimal time, they still called the race, and they called Cole Custer the win. He was in the lead, obviously, when the race was called. Cole's going to be back this weekend pulling double duty in Atlanta. He'll be driving the 00 in Xfinity, then he'll be driving the number 51 in the Cup Series. But congratulations to Cole. He's a friend of the show. He's had some fits and starts getting it going when he's relegated back to Xfinity, but hopefully he can build some momentum off of it. I had said the concert's canceled. How upset were you with that, Spider? Let's try to talk about it realistically, about stuff that went wrong. We were kind of looking forward to doing some of that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it was kind of a bummer because for the reasons that I think like over 75% of the tickets sold or people in attendance for this event were first-time race goers, which probably you can point and attribute a little bit of that number to the people interested in seeing the Chainsmokers, the Black Crowes, Miranda Lambert, Charlie Crockett, whoever it may have been that was driving them to the track. But I think a lot of people, especially in our group, you and I go to a lot of races, but the Chicago guys, Hank and everyone else we had with us, were kind of looking forward to the concerts, as was I. And it kind of stunk that they got canceled. But to me, my takeaway in all of that is we didn't have the concerts, and we kind of had a rain-shortened race, and people still seemed very happy and seemed to come around on the idea and the event itself when it was formerly getting, criticized at every opportunity. So I think to see people kind of develop and turn the corner, despite us not even getting, the full 100 laps or the 4 promised concerts, I still think it's a massive success. But yeah, I was a little bummed. I wanted to see Chainsmokers and Miranda Lambert specifically.
I'm still shocked by the negativity on NASCAR Twitter. Like there's so many people that are, I use the word stodgy, even though I'm probably the stodgiest person, I'm just like old and slow moving on any kind of, change. They're so like against it, just constantly quoting what the temp was down in Daytona, as opposed to us doing this thing in Chicago. But then as you go through Twitter, NASCAR Twitter, there's like a shining beacon. And it's this guy, Bob Pockrass. I know everybody knows Bob Pockrass. I almost called him Bobby for some reason. But at one point when we were sitting there, we were waiting for updates, and we were with NASCAR people. Again, we're with the best NASCAR people in the world. I'm convinced that crew that they put with us, the most fun, most accommodating, they're just great. And we throw them curveballs, and they always kind of work through stuff with us. But I think even they were relying on Bob Pockrass for updates during the rain delay. That guy, I don't know exactly who he has naked pictures of, but that guy gets everything before anybody else. I mean, God bless him too. He's and he doesn't stop either. So the guys, we should get him on the show. I don't know if he does podcasts like guests or whatever. We should get him on the show. I'll feel like the stupidest guy in the room, but we should.
He's a New York City resident, Large. We could probably have him in studio.
Are you kidding me? That guy's in New York City?
He flies back to New York City every race. Actually, fun fact, one of the first races I ever went to, Daytona 500, he was on our flight back. And I think it was me and Kate were like picking his brain. And then my love for NASCAR evolved. And I realized I was basically speaking to like the Woj or the Shams of the sport, like he was just like another NASCAR fan on this flight. So always been a big Bob Pockrass fan. And you're right, he doesn't miss.
He's a god, yeah. But there is somebody hot on his tail. There's somebody right on his tail because Spider is dying to scoop something. Spidey Scoops, the t-shirts are already drawn up. There's a segment and the whole deal. You dropped a couple of Woj bombs this weekend. I think you might have, moved them in and out and stuff like that. Can you comment on the next Bob Pockrass being on the Rubbin is Racing podcast right now as my co-host?
Yeah, so I think I'm an up and coming Bob Pockrass. The
Yeah.
Xfinity Bob Pockrass is what they're calling me. Some of you may have seen a couple tweets I sent out this weekend, which have since been deleted. If you did see what I reported, I stand by it. Out of the courtesy of the great relationship Large just outlined with our NASCAR caretakers, the tweets came down, which I respect. I respect their decision to make their own announcement on their own time. That being said, I stand by what I said, and I think everything is true for the most part. So, yeah, one day I'll have my day in the sun, and it will be on me, and I will be P1 in breaking news ahead of Adam Stern, ahead of Bob Pockrass. But I don't think today is the day. What I will say, the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series schedule is shaping up to be very, very exciting.
I agree. And that wasn't your first foray into Spidey Scoops wound up being a good one. I mean, you dropped the Kyle Busch news before anybody else.
We
So if
had
you
that
think that
months.
Spidey is just hearing this from some homeless guys, we're walking back to our Uber in Chicago, it's not true. You had that thing pinned. And then, similarly, you took advantage of a relationship to report this week, but I'm just kidding. I'm
Listen,
fucking with you.
keep doubting Spidey Scoops. The
Yeah.
Kyle Busch track record proves it all. I like to think that I have established some credibility in breaking news in this sport. And
Yeah.
I had Kyle Busch like months before everyone else. People were telling me, oh, this blog is going to get deleted. This is all speculation. None of this is true, etc. So point being, we'll be back with a lot of breaking news, and stay tuned for the excitement that is the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series schedule.
And just like Spider got the first billing on the podcast, this is Rubbin is Racing with Spider and Large. Spider has also taken dibs on dropping any new news. So even if I have it, in deference, I will give it to Spider to keep up the Spidey Scoops thing.
I
Um,
respect that.
Thank you. Before we get to Sunday's results, we've been getting a couple of DMs, and it seems like the DMs we get are not like, hey, boys, eat a dick. Sincerely, Joey. The DMs we've been getting have been pretty good. So I'm going to read a couple of them. But before I do that, I want to remind everybody that this podcast is brought to you by Coca-Cola. I got a Coke Zero right now. We're coming towards the Coke Zero Sugar 400, which Spider and I will be in attendance at down in Daytona. Before that happens, we'll be in a Michigan race and whatnot, but I can't wait to get down there. One of the things I'm excited about this weekend is that Coke has been saying that they're going to have some paint schemes, and Denny Hamlin is driving. The 11 car is going to be a Coke car this weekend down in Atlanta, and it looks awesome. It looks fantastic. I just got to see most of the paint schemes. One of my favorite paint schemes in the world consistently is the one that Chase Elliott does for the Children's Hospital, which he's doing in Atlanta again this year, where he has a sickly child. I shouldn't say that lightly, but he has somebody who's a patient at the hospital design the skin for his car. That's fire as all hell, believe me. But I love the look of the 11 car, the silver 11 on top of the Coca-Cola red and white. So Coke's been involved with the Coke family of drivers for the past 25 years, the 25th anniversary. This is the first year that we're part of the Coke family of podcasters. Everybody that we spoke to that's involved with Coke. And that's obviously Logano just bumping into us in Nashville. That's obviously us doing some stuff with Austin Dillon, with our relationship with Denny. Suarez, we're supposed to have Cap Houston that's put on hold just because of the rain. Everybody, Chase is obviously very good with us. So we really do feel like we're part of the family, and we we always appreciate what they do for us. So is this the best Coke ever? I don't know. You find out by buying one and take a taste today.
Large, how fun was it at Portillo's with Austin Dillon for the
Yeah.
Coke thing?
Yeah, it was good. I'll tell you, he's such a nice dude, and he's got no shortage of stories. Austin Dillon did a signing and brought one of his cars and did a signing at Portillo's. So Spider and I had gone down, obviously again with Liam and the boys. And I guess when I say Spider and I, everyone can just assume that Liam's along, instead of me wasting time on Liam. And so when we got to Portillo's afterwards, when we were done with Austin, he was telling some stories about Ricky Stenhouse with the hot nut challenge, where I think Ricky had to be fucking flown out to a hospital or some shit. Then we got to go in the back. I was having a couple of beers. We made some shakes. We made some Chicago dogs. Again, I mean, that's not the access we get at the tracks, but I don't think anyone gets that Portillo's access that we get either. And I think it's thanks to Coke on that one. So cheers to them,
That
right?
yeah, for sure. We
Um,
also
go ahead.
we also enjoyed a Coke at JP Graziano. Shout out JP Graziano's. Jeffrey Earnhardt did a signing there, and we got some of the best sandwiches in Chicago. And I also got to fire up Jeffrey Earnhardt's display car in front of JP Graziano's restaurant. We woke up the sleeping folks in Chicago with my engine roars.
Nobody asked to do it. The car was just sitting there, and our good friend Nadav is a guy I've been friends with since I did Barstool Breakfast. You know, we're the biggest NASCAR podcast among Hasidic Jewish people. Everyone knows that. I mean, we hang our hats on that. Shout out Mendel. Nadav is actually a Jewish guy from Alabama who used to call into Barstool Breakfast and give me knowledge whenever I'd mention, traditions from the Jewish religion. So Nadav was in Chicago with Jeffrey because he has some licensing deal with him and he handles Jeffrey in some way. So we went to JP Graziano's, my favorite sandwich shop in Chicago. And the car was out there. And finally, Spider said, "You mind if I fire this bitch up?" And everybody else was like, "No, that's not going to happen." And Jeff's like, "Yeah, sure, jump in." So Spider jumped in. He taught you just a couple of things. You've never done it before. I mean, I know you've done the sim stuff.
Yeah,
And
never before in real life. And then he basically, I felt like I broke the car for a second,
I
Large.
thought you did.
I definitely did some damage. When I first went to start it, it made an awful noise. And then I thought that Jeffrey immediately regretted his decision to put the keys in the ignition for me.
How's it feel, though, to get that rumble underneath it? Because you gunned it a couple of times. And it
Oh,
did.
yeah.
It shook.
I wish if I had that opportunity again, I think I would have full throttled the gas. I really wanted to hear those RPMs, hear them horses sing, but still an unbelievable experience and another great opportunity for to share a Coke and eat some great food in Chicago. I mean, I feel like we hit all the bases. Portillo's and JP Graziano's, two Chicago classics, and then of course, thanks to Coke, we washed it down. So great
Spider,
week in the food category.
yeah, one of the things that I mentioned quite a bit is how loud these cars are. And the Chicago art museum had said that they were actually shaking some of the pictures on the walls, the paintings on the walls when we were running stuff in practice and whatnot. They did have mufflers on the car this weekend. They had the taillights on the car. They had tow hitches on the back. So they had a bunch of stuff. Obviously, that was a little bit different. But I'm always amazed at how loud things are, particularly last week when we went from opening up a club for 3 days to then doing Nashville without any kind of getaway, any kind of box to get away to. So the first DM is from this guy, Garrett. He said, you thought your ears hurt from last weekend? You aren't going to like the Chili Bowl. So the Chili Bowl is that dirt race that we're going to go to down in Oklahoma in January. So Garrett says, my old man and I drive straight up to Wisconsin once the A is done on Saturday night, Sunday morning, and I feel like shit for a week after. Ears ring for about 3 days. This is what I'm hearing a lot of. Everybody who I mentioned the Chili Bowl to, they must think I'm the biggest pussy in the world. They're like, Large, it's going to kill a guy my age. So I'm not getting skeptical. I'm still going, but I'm going to pay attention to it. The second one we got is this guy, Keith from Bakersfield, who hit me up on DM and he said, hey, buddy, I'll start by saying I'm as high as fuck. I don't mind it, right? Hit me when you're high. I don't care. He
The
said,
Kyle
with that,
Kush.
yeah, he was sitting the Kyle Kush with the 3G. Twisted 15 for 15% off, bro. With that said, I'm watching the latest Rubbin is Racing, and NASCAR did used to do a Legends race at Bristol's years ago until Larry Pearson, David's son, got fucked up real bad in a wreck. So he hit me with that on some night, like maybe on a Saturday night, and he was high as all. The next morning, he sends, here's a video of the racing crash. I'm not high anymore. So he followed up with a sober DM, which I love. And he's responding to the fact that Spider and I were saying how much we'd love to have a guy like Carl Edwards get back, even if he doesn't want to run a Cup Series race, to do some sort of all-star retired legends race. It's a perfect name for it, obviously, where we get Jeff Gordon, we get Harvick next year, all these guys back into the car, and how NASCAR would do huge numbers with that. I mean, I would watch that more than I'd watch the all-star race, you know? So I guess the reason that they stopped doing it was because of this wreck, which was in 2010. And that's going to turn into like a de facto Twisted History segment. I think you're going to like this one, Spider. Not that you don't like all the Twisted History stuff, but I think you're going to like this. 2010, right? There's something called the Saturday Night Showdown at Bristol. It's the Legends race. And a 56-year-old Larry Pearson. So he's not young. 56-year-old Larry Pearson. They're in Bristol. He hits the wall off of turn 2. Just loses the car, hits the wall. So the car turns and then starts to drift back down towards the infield, across the track, right? And that's when a guy named Charlie Glotzback barrels through turn 2 and T-bones Larry Pearson on the driver's side at near full speed. Worst place in the world to get hit, as we all know. Get T-boned on the driver's side. And back then, the cars weren't like they are now. Very, very difficult. So Larry was unconscious when they cut him out of the car. They strapped him onto a backboard and they helicoptered him to the hospital while his whole family was in the crowd, right? They flew him to Bristol Regional Medical Center, fractured pelvis, fractured right hand, compound fracture to his left ankle. He underwent surgery. But like I said, they cut him out of the car. He was unconscious and they took him away. And it ruined the whole event. There was only 5 laps left, I think, but it ruined the whole event. So much so that they haven't run it since. And I know it's unfortunate, but that happens in this sport, right? People get T-boned all the time and all that stuff. So, you know, I don't know why they would do that and stop these races when people know that's the problem. But here's the real issue. That guy, Charlie Glotzback, Charlie the Charging Comet Glotzback, he was 71 years old when he did it. He was 71 fucking years old when he T-boned Pearson. And when I said that Larry's family was in the crowd, I should have said everybody but his dad, because his dad, David Pearson, who's a legend, won 3 Cup championships in the 1960s. He never missed a race for the years that he was active. He was also driving in that Legends race. And his dad was 75 at the time. So you had a 71-year-old and a 75-year-old. Pearson was like 3 years away from having a stroke. And they're racing around Bristol in a field of cars doing 120 miles an hour. That's no bueno. That's not good. But I think if they were to do it where they maybe put a little bit of an age limit on it just to make it a little safer, and knowing how the cars are now, I think this is the perfect time to fire up the Legends race again. You agree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we said it last week. I think it's just a win-win for the sport if we get to see all these guys that still kind of have a little bit of a flame, maybe not the full-time desire,
right?
But I think it would be awesome to see, maybe 4 or 5 events a year with what you described, with those guys
Absolutely.
coming back. And I think there's no shortage of drivers that would have interest in doing it either.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do. I think so many people, like when I had Greg Biffle take me out on the pace car that time, you know, and he's up against the wall doing 140 miles an hour. Second scariest thing I've ever done at the track, behind us going up on that stupid picnic table in Phoenix, where they took us up 160 feet in the air. That was unnecessary. But, those guys are just clamoring to get back in the car in some respect. And I think it would be just electric. The next DM was actually from 2 people. 2 different people hit me, a guy named Kyle Jackson and a guy named Brandon who gives me stuff all the time. Just because we had mentioned, Justin Mark said last week that Ross Chastain, his win at Nashville was the biggest win in company's history. And I question that. Like, I questioned it, whether or not that was true or whether he was just getting excited because it was the last win. And then both these guys, Kyle and Brandon, basically sent the same tweet saying, I wanted to holler at you, saying that Trackhouse's biggest win was because Justin Mark lives near Nashville. Trackhouse was formed in Nashville, and I believe is still based there, even though there's a shop in Concord. And Justin wants to build a Trackhouse location on Broadway in Nashville. I get it. So let's say it was the biggest win up to that point, or it wasn't the biggest win up to that point. Did he speak too soon? Is this one bigger? I'm asking you, is this win by Project 91 this weekend. We're not burying the lead. We'll talk about, what had happened this weekend. Is this bigger than what had happened last week with Ross Chastain?
Well, those are two different questions. I think this one is bigger than what happened with Ross Chastain, simply for the fact that this is really the first time in modern day racing that we've seen a first-time driver win a Cup Series race in their debut. Granted, that happened in the first ever NASCAR race, but this is pretty much the first time that's ever happened. For that reason, I think this is bigger. Also, respectfully to Kyle and Brandon, Trackhouse is not, sure, they have ties to Nashville. They have a sponsor that is a bar in Nashville. Justin Marks has ties to the city. Mm-hmm. I'm not really buying that. Don't get me wrong. It was a big win, and I'm sure it means a lot to Justin given his ties to Nashville. But in my opinion, the Project 91 win is bigger for the simple fact of what I said. It's historic in the fact that it's a debut win for SVG. And also, if I'm Justin Marks, this Project 91 car is a brainchild of your mind. That you had an epiphany one day that said, hey, let's add a third car for select races, pick someone that we think is going to be elite on these tracks and try our best. And that's exactly what they did. So to me, this is bigger than Ross's win at Nashville because Justin Marks hit the nail on the head with what he was trying to do. He Project 91 was a home run thus far. And a massive success as we saw this past weekend. That being said, if we're going to rank all the Trackhouse wins, I still think Ross and Daniel's success last year takes precedent over everything we've seen this year. Granted, Ross's win this year at Nashville was big, and Trackhouse kind of back after that. And then also the Project 91, as I just said, massive historic race. But at the end of the day, SVG is he's not a full-time Cup driver. So I think, to me, if we're looking at the significance of their wins, the Trackhouse wins last year take precedent simply for the fact that those are full-time Cup guys that you kind of expect to win. So when you see that success, I think that's more beneficial for the team in the grand scheme of things. Don't get me wrong, the 91 winning is massive, but
is it over? Is Project 91 now a success? Do they need to even continue doing this? Do you know what I'm saying? It could not, and I know the whole idea with the Kiki, that other guy didn't work out that well, but this was huge. This is as good as they could have wanted it because there was a lot of eyes on NASCAR this weekend for the Chicago race. And there was a lot of headlines outside of the traditional sporting arena that was covering the Chicago race. So then to have on top of that, their guy from New Zealand win. That's exact. I don't think that Justin could have asked for a better result than what he'd gotten this weekend. Looks like Project 91 worked. When you find, your project is to find a cure for, the common cold, you find it, then you move on. It's almost, or do other teams now say, Jesus, I got to get my own Project 91. I got to go and start scouring, Abu Dhabi for the best street racer that go all around. I don't know what this is going to do to the complexion of the sport.
It's definitely interesting to see where Trackhouse goes from here. Do they give SVG, more looks in the 91, or do they say, hey, let's go with drivers that we feel are most qualified for whatever track the car is running at? But yeah. I think they hit a home run this week with SVG behind the wheel. I think he kind of exposed some of the drivers, but at the same time, the only thing that could have gone better for Trackhouse this weekend was Justin Marks winning the Xfinity Series. But I have to respect him for even racing, owning a team, and now after SVG's win, we've seen Justin Marks have two drivers born outside the USA win in the NASCAR Cup Series. So I think that's a massive feat in itself.
And Shane had won in the car that Suarez won in Sonoma, which I thought was kind of poetic too. Listen, Shane Van Gisbergen was a factor throughout this race. He started third. He was P3 after stage one. He was P4 after stage two. Even though he led only 9 laps total, he was the guy. He was the guy who was always in contention. And he didn't come out of nowhere. He's a 3-time Supercar champ. He has 78 Supercar wins. I don't doubt the degree of difficulty because he's done all those 78 Supercar wins with the steering wheel on the wrong side, right? So, you think he goes his whole life knowing how to hug a right wall and then having to throw that to the other side, you know what I mean? Like not having that perspective that he's had his whole career. So it was no small feat. It was the first win in his first Cup start. That hasn't happened since 1963. It's the first time the number 91, just the number 91 car, that hasn't won since 1953. And that was with Tim Flock, who we did a twisted on here. He's the guy who rode with the monkey, Jocko Flacco. So if you look up Monkey Drives NASCAR, you'll see Jocko Flacco in the 91. And that's in 1953. And that's the last time that car has crossed the finish line as a winner, right? And then to top it all off, the guy cements himself as a stud. You said it right away, that it was one of the most efficient burnouts in that small little thing. It was very,
the track
very...
was so narrow.
Yeah. And we were right. That's where we were. That was our position right there. So you were overlooking it. And then he goes up on, the winner's circle on the stage, and he does this champagne bottle pop, the two hands, hits it on the ground, pops it up. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I think it's easy to fall in love with this guy. So yeah, congratulations to him. It's historic
perspectives to watch the race from up in that paddock club. It just so happened that right beneath us was the pit boxes, and the 91 team, Project 91, was literally right beneath us. Right. So watching them in the closing laps and their teammates celebrate with every pass or advancement, and then seeing them celebrate once he actually won, and then it was just awesome. So the paddock club,
and they even had to do the post-race inspection. I don't even think there was a tent up. They sort of took them apart on the road that led out of the thing. It really, NASCAR had to pivot in every way possible. I maybe I'm giving them way too much credit, but it was pretty cool to see. I think one of the guys who summed it up pretty well, better than you or I could, perhaps, is that guy Dale from the Garage Guys. We love Dale and Chase from the Garage Guys, and I had seen a tweet from Dale where he said, "Imagine where NASCAR would be without Trackhouse." This is Dale talking. "They fueled some of the sport's most thrilling and monumental moments over the past couple of years. In such a short time, they've changed our sport forever. It's easy to lose sight of how massive their impact is. As a lifelong NASCAR fan, I'm so thankful for Justin Marks creating this operation. He deserves all the success and more." And he cites it. Pitbull being an owner is sexy. With the Pitbull naming his last album Trackhouse, having the first Mexican winner, Project 91, the Hail Melon, the Punch, which maybe they don't own up to, but the Punch, now the first Kiwi win. So I think it's as well put as can be well put that Trackhouse has been an absolute boon for NASCAR in the past couple of seasons, right? Because
Justin Marks he's a disruptor in the sport. He's just throwing out everything you've known about traditions and how these teams standardly operate, and he's just doing it his own way. All the while, as everything you just outlined, he's also wheeling a car on Saturdays occasionally in the process, in the midst of all this. So huge Justin Marks fan. And Dale's right. You have to kind of appreciate and acknowledge what he's doing, and just the short amount of time. So,
yeah. And I think there's some negatives involved with it too. So Landon Castle, who I think I've only mentioned once or twice on the show, because he was part of that prank that Bubba Wallace had pulled on, I think, Ryan Blaney, where he had a bunch of people do cameos. Landon was one of them. I don't know Landon Castle's career. I looked it up. I know he was in the Cup Series. He raced over 300 times in the Cup Series, raced over maybe 170 times in Xfinity. He's wheeled a couple of, even Truck Series type things. I don't believe he has any wins, but he had tweeted this: "Amazing drive all weekend by Shane VG 97. Call it whatever you want. Talent, versatile, it doesn't matter. This guy just smoked the field, and it wasn't even close. Can't help but think this puts Cup drivers, all NASCAR drivers for that matter, officially on notice. Figure out road street racing or get replaced." I think that's much. I think that's a little bit too much. That seemed to be the sentiment coming out of this thing. Chase Elliott says, Shane's going to go back and tell all his friends how terrible we are. Joey had made fun. What's his name? Whatever it is.
Cheeseburger.
Cheeseburger.
To be fair to Joey, that's been me all weekend. I'm just calling him strictly SVG because I still haven't gotten it down.
Right. I was hoping that NASCAR wouldn't be that much of a stickler, because I wanted to hear, Larry McReynolds say, Shanae Van Gisberger or something like that. But I don't think like it's a great historic event, but I'm not sure that it's going to change other people's. I don't think Chase is afraid. You know what I mean? I don't think that anyone is really that disrupted as a NASCAR driver. I'm just talking as a NASCAR driver. Do you think these guys are all like bothered by this? Like
Honestly,
secretly?
honestly, I do. I
Do you?
do. I saw Kyle Larson walking away from his car like post race from up in the paddock club there, and he just looked like he was not happy. He looked like he was just,
Mm-hmm.
very locked in. And I think as much as Chase was joking when he said that Shane was going to go home and tell all of his friends how bad he was, I think there's a little bit of truth to that, which is like, damn, anyone can just show up on a street course. Granted, like, NASCAR is still working to add more street courses into their rotation, but I don't know. It's a little concerning to have a first timer come in and be, the defending champion and multiple time Cup Series winner. Like I think the traditional NASCAR Cup drivers should be on notice because it seems like they have a lot of work to do with their road course skills. And I know that they spent a lot of time simming up to this race and working on the computer and whatnot, but it looks like NASCAR is posturing for a lot more of these races in the coming years. So I think that they need to figure it out sooner rather than later. Yeah.
There was a lot of guys who did very well. So I'm going to put it in perspective too, and I'm going to be on the other side of the argument than you are. This was a rain shortened, right? Rain soaked track that is brand new, that no one's ever raced on before, that they had no knowledge in. So like maybe there's tweaks that turn 6 that they needed to work out. Like this was not a perfect course. NASCAR could not get the course perfectly just by drawing it up in, some sort of sim, like you were saying. So I think these drivers are going to naturally get better at these street courses. These street courses are naturally going to be designed better. The weather is obviously not going to play a factor, and they're going to run the whole 100 laps, like the way that Chris Bell had got hosed off of it getting dropped to 75 laps, the way Kyle Larson had gotten hosed on one of those restarts when he was jammed up with a bunch of people. He was put in the wrong order on the restart after that. So there's a lot of things individually for drivers that went wrong. So even though I think it's a very, very good headline and a huge achievement for Justin Marks and Shane and Trackhouse and all that stuff, I don't think these guys should be on notice as much as some of the people on Twitter had said. But, and I'll tell you what, clip that, Liam, and prove me wrong in 2 years when Shane Van Gisbergen or whatever is just fucking running through ovals, right? Running through short tracks, running through super speedways. But until he does that, congratulations, but we're moving on, right? The rest of the field. We'll look at the rest of the field. Stage 1 was all Bell versus Reddick. Bell won the first stage. It was his first stage win of the season, which I found surprising. And then Bell won stage 2 also. I thought we were going to be set up for one of those bets. Guy wins both stages and takes checkered. Final stage, both Bell and Reddick went into those tires. Austin Dillon was in the tires. Martin Truex was in the tires. And Gragson was in there 4 times. Gragson hit the tires in turn 6 4 times. We're very close friends with the gentleman from Wendy's, right? We speak to him all the time. Got you the Baconator shirt, brought me the hat because I took the plane back with him. Is Noah a promotional genius? Did Noah kind of see that, he's probably not going to win this thing? Let's get the Baconator car as much fucking press as possible. Because for a guy who finished wherever Noah finished, his car got more screen time for Wendy's than possibly any other car than the Trackhouse car.
I think yes and no, Large. He is a promotional genius. He does a great job about marketing himself and putting on for his sponsors, which we've seen countless times this season. However, I cannot credit his wrecking to screen time. Unfortunately, I think Noah was just flat out struggling with this track. And I don't think it was like, hey, let me get this car some screen time. Let me wreck so they put me on TV. I think he genuinely just struggled. And it's kind of been the moral of the story for Legacy this year.
Yeah, but before people call me an idiot, and I appreciate you not calling me an idiot with that, Spider, because it is an idiotic thing to say. He's in a Chevy. It doesn't seem like they're getting a lot of support going into the end of the season. From everything we've heard around the paddocks, and this is a Spidey scoop, Chevy's not been given the legacy team the support that they were obviously before they said they were jumping ship at the end of the season. So if he's in a lawnmower, maybe you get a couple of eyes on it if you run into the thing. It's just something to consider. But what I think is undeniable is that this next gen car was a hell of a lot more durable than I thought it was going to be. These guys were going hard into that, and they were dug in under these tires and towed out to where I was like, okay, this guy's parked for the day, and everybody came back. Like Kyle Busch, when he got pulled out of the tires, he's like, nope, hood's buckled, we're good, let's go. Were you surprised? Yeah. Were you surprised in how durable those cars were?
I'm not, because a lot of the guys have been complaining that these cars don't really crumple as much as the previous gen cars. So I know they're built a little bit more robust. What I was surprised about was just Kyle Busch getting into the tires like that very early. And then he still finished fifth, which we'll get to the over-unders in a second. But I was really impressed with his ability to run the race after that. I thought his day was going to be pretty much over, and his car really didn't have that much damage. It seemed like the hood was bent a little bit, but he still hung in the race, as we saw. So I thought you're right. They hold up pretty well.
Let's go into the over-unders. I will temper the Kyle Busch one because he did have a timely pit stop. Like where he had to go in and pit wound up working out very well for him, but I know he's going to be one of your performers. So what did you see that you liked, and what did you see that you didn't like this week at the race?
Well, I'll start with Kyle Busch, who, as I said, he wrecked early and then got a fifth place finish. And I just mentioned Kyle Larson before being upset. I mean, he finished fourth. That's still pretty good. But other guys I have in my overs: Ty Gibbs finishing ninth place, Michael McDowell seventh place finish. You got to show some love for SVG, of course, and Justin Haley. I know they finished 1 and 2, but those are guys that we're unfamiliar with running up front and unfamiliar with in general when it comes to SVG. Justin Haley, I was really impressed with. Granted, it might have been, credit to their pit strategy and seeing that the race may have been shortened and jumping to conclusions there, but I think they did really good. Eric Jones, I was impressed with. He got a 16th place finish, and he was another guy that was involved in a really early wreck. And even Noah Gragson, for as much as he was in the wall, he finished 25th and ahead of 12 other cars. So tough day for the legacy guys, but in the grand scheme of things, it could be worse. The under, as much as I just said, both Noah and Eric, legacy, I mean, they continue to struggle. So I would like to see them get back on track, and that might have to wait till next season. And the other under I'm taking is the weather, but that's nobody's fault but, God. So all things considered, I guess one more over, the people at the track that made it all happen, like they were up against all odds and they still pulled off a great event, or as good as it could have been. And I think majority of people want the race to come back, and we're very satisfied and happy with the product. So yeah, congrats to everyone. And I'm taking the over on anyone who had a hand in putting this event on. What did I miss, Large?
Let me ask you about your over-unders. So you had Ty Gibbs, obviously, as one. So the Toyotas only had one car in the top 10. That doesn't bode well for legacy, right? But I know it's a street race. It's a little bit different, but they only had one car in the top 10, and that was Ty Gibbs. Is the rookie going to make the playoffs this year? Right now, he's 16, so he's in the playoffs, but I think his lead is only like 6 points, maybe above Suarez. You think Ty Gibbs keeps this going? You think Ty Gibbs is a playoff driver his rookie season?
I think he's going to have a great rest of the season and consistent with how he's been running. But I'm not sure that he'll make the playoffs, only because there's still a lot of wins that need to go around. I still think our guy Chase Elliott gets one done, and he's right there on points too. So the margin is just too slim. I think Ty needs to a win, obviously, but he looked really, really good. And he was running like pretty much top 10 consistently at Chicago. But I don't know. I don't know how he'll bode the rest of the schedule, and if there's other, opportunities where he might be able to make up some ground. But as of right now, I'd probably say no to Ty Gibbs in the playoffs. I would definitely say, granted, it's a 2-horse race, but he's definitely got Rookie of the Year locked up over Noah Gragson. And you have to commend the way he's been driving in his rookie year. So
yeah, let's go to your boy Chase, right? He's trending the right way. going into Atlanta. So Sonoma, 5th place finish. Nashville, 4th place finish. Chicago, 3rd place finish, right? So we're trending the right way. Chase Elliott is amassing the points, not necessarily stage points, but he's doing what he needs to do to put himself in a situation, I think, where he does get that dub before the end of the season. Hendrick finished P3 and P4. They didn't lead the race for a single lap, which I thought was wild too. Even though it was a shortened race, Hendrick never had a car that was leading the race. With that, let's go to Atlanta. Let's go to Atlanta. This preview of Atlanta is brought to you by NASCAR. So we're going from the streets, like I said, to a high-speed oval in Atlanta. The Quaker State 400 will be the second visit to Atlanta Motor Speedway this year after Joey Logano won the spring race over Brad Kay in like a rare 1-2 finish for Ford. We haven't seen that at all this season. As a matter of fact, we only saw one other Ford victory, and that's when Blaney won the Coca-Cola 600. But after the 2021 season, Atlanta swapped a really rough surface from the 1990s for like a smooth layer of asphalt on top of high bank counters. So it makes it essentially a super speedway. For people who forget, Atlanta is considered a super speedway, except for the fact that it's only 1.5 miles long, right? Kevin Harvick has 3 wins in Atlanta. He leads all active drivers at that track. And even though the race seems wide open, the last 2 Atlanta races have been won from the pole position. That's why I'm not going to pick a winner this week. I'm going to wait for qualifying. The big change for this year's summer event is that it's going to run under the lights, like I said at the top of the show. So it takes some of that Georgia heat out of play. So make sure you tune into NASCAR this Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern on USA for the Quaker State 400 from Atlanta Motor Speedway. All righty, that's coming up this Sunday. And with that, we're going to close off with Picking the Tires, which is brought to you by Barstool Sportsbook. Spider, would you like to lead off, or would you like me to lead off?
I'll lead off here.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you 1 outright pick and then 2 teams that I think could win. William Byron is currently 14-1. William Byron's been running really good, and I don't know. I think he can get it done here. I'm tempted to put a little championship future on William Byron right now. I think he's been one of the best drivers this year. He's kind of cooled off a little from where we saw him get the 2 wins early this season. He had that one at at Darlington. But yeah, I think William Byron's going to be back in victory lane here shortly. And I think this might be the track to do it. That being said, another 2 teams I'm riding with. You look at and I'm really just trying to go off recent race data, as Large mentioned that the track has been, redone a little bit and repaved. William Byron won here last year, so another point for William. And then I'm also looking at the Trackhouse guys. Trackhouse, Suarez was 4th here last year, and Ross Chastain, where's Ross Chastain? Oh, he was 2nd. So I think Trackhouse is a good spot. They're plus 1,100 to win. I think that's worth a sprinkle. And then another team I'm looking at, which is even lower odds, which is a little intriguing to me, is RFK, which is plus 850. I think Brad Kay and Chris Buescher are 2 guys that have looked really strong, and they're another team that's like just knocking on the door. It seemed like they're always in contention, always there, and I think this might be a good opportunity for them to get it done. I also have a couple top 5 picks for you. I'm taking Chase Elliott, Georgia's own. Mm-hmm. I think Chase Elliott top 5 plus 245 is worth a look. And there's also some value. If you don't like Trackhouse to win, I think it's definitely worth a sprinkle of those guys in top 5. Daniel Suarez is 5-1 for a top 5. Ross Chastain is plus 295 for a top 5. And then also same goes for the RFK guys. Brad Kay for a top 5 finish is plus 265. And his teammate Chris Buescher for a top 5 is plus 350. Those are, I know I just mentioned 6 drivers between Brad, right, Buescher, Chase, Byron, and actually that's 7, Daniel and Ross. But those guys are the ones I'm looking out for. It's really on you if you want to ride with the team to win, top 5, take them outright. But my 1 outright play is going to be William Byron, and then I'm going to sprinkle RFK and Trackhouse to win. Trackhouse, ride that momentum. It could be 3 in a row. And both their drivers looked great here last year. So that's the method for my madness this week. Large, what do you got?
Byron's my only future that I still have. I took it after that second win.
What are the odds on that?
Plus 800.
Okay.
Because it was after the second win. But he had all that momentum. Nobody could touch Byron. I mean,
right.
He caught like a little bit of clean air, and he was in an absolute rocket ship. So that's when I grabbed that. For this week, I grabbed Corey LaJoie as the top 10. So
Love
top
it.
10 finish from LaJoy. He kind of does well on these tracks. That's plus 195. So you're getting almost 2-1 on a top 10 for Corey. A little bit of a gamble, but I don't mind it. I'm also doing
Well,
the top 10. Yeah, go ahead.
Corey was balling here last year. He almost won. Did you see how hard he tried to win this race? He put it in the
Yeah.
wall there at the end, but it looked like he could have got it done.
Yeah, and I think that he's, I mean, I know that he had some fits and starts at the street course, but I'm not using that really as any kind of measuring stick. But, we remember a couple of weeks ago when he didn't perform as well as he would have wanted to inside of, a Hendrick car, right? But I think Corey does tend to outperform in the cars that he drives. So when he was in a rocket ship, it was like, he's not normally in rocket ships, but he's also a very good driver in the car in the sevens. So I think that he has a shot at least for a top 10. I'm going to take Bubba as a top 10 too. So I have two top 10 picks, Bubba and LaJoy. I think Bubba does well in these courses too. So he's plus 145. Then I'm screwing around with some of these group bets. There's a group A. It's Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, and Denny Hamlin. That's a pretty powerful group. You have to choose one. Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, or Denny Hamlin. Who would you pick in that group? Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, Logano, or Hamlin?
I'm going to take one of the two Coca-Cola family of drivers, probably Chase Elliott, just because of the Georgia ties. And I know that, I don't know.
Exactly what I did.
Love that story.
Yeah,
but also Denny Hamlin and that fucking Coke scheme is so sick.
I know. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm taking Chase. I'm taking Chase in Group A at plus 250. I think that's good. At Barstool Sportsbook, I say it all the time. They do very, very competitive lines for NASCAR. So Chase Elliott in Group A to win, I got that at plus 250. And then there's a head-to-head matchup. It's Denny Hamlin and Brad Kay. It's minus 114. It's not much. It's almost just about a pick 'em, but I'm picking Denny. And again, I'm picking Denny because he's in that rocket ship of a Coke car. So that's it. Denny Hamlin over Brad Kay, Chase Elliott in Group A, and then I have Bubba and Corey LaJoy, both top 10s.
How about this, Large? This one, not that I'm into this play. I'm just curious about this. The team of the race winner, that's not gonna focus. But currently Hendrick is the favorite 4-1. The next option is any other team plus 450.
No, I think that's any other team, but I read that the exact same way. I read it the exact same way. I think, but right underneath Hendrick, they have the other team, right? So they have Joe Gibbs at plus 450, Penske at plus 500. Yeah. I think it's anyone but those guys, right?
Yeah, which is crazy. But how? I mean, that's way too low of a price. Yeah, maybe I'm mistaken. Does that mean that the odds makers love one of these one-off, random back runners to pull some magic here? That's almost worth sprinkling some money on. I don't know what you're thinking.
It's funny because if you guys look at the Barstool Sportsbook for the Quaker State 400, there are so many different bets that you can place. Spider, I was befuddled at that bet also. That's one of the ones that I stayed away from because I simply didn't understand it, and now I have to bet it. I got no choice.
I think I'm with you.
Yeah. It's like accidentally picking another number on a lotto card. All right, so I'm in that for some reason too. But that's it. So enjoy the race this weekend, guys. Enjoy going back to an oval. Spider and I are going to be home for the next couple of weeks until Michigan. That's our next race, is going to be at Michigan, where I believe we're going to be the Grand Marshals for the Cabo Wabo 250, the Xfinity race. It's going to be on Saturday. So we're very much looking forward to that. Thank you to everyone who reached out and said hello in Chicago. I'm always floored with the amount of people that are actually listening to this, or the group that does that show up at races. We had a bunch of kids last night at the house. One of my son's friends, Bennett, had said that he listens to us every week, and that he goes to Blacksburg, Virginia Tech. And he's thinking about driving down to Rough and Rowdy to meet you and Jersey Jerry. And he's a big
Shout
fan.
out Bennett. I would love to meet Bennett. Thanks for listening.
I used to coach him in hoops back in the 3rd grade. But anyway, so as we're picking up a small following, we just want you to know that we appreciate everything that you guys do. And we'll see you next week on Rubbin is Racing.